Everyone, welcome to Food Talk Live with Danny Nierenberg. Convenient than ever. Food time sessions with we think it's discussion pressing problem about the solution. Will difficulties, suggestions. Is one of the reasons in the world blunt and solution introduced, but let me currently the University of Texas. World in 7 sheep. He is also on food systems and has, I think, more than America, which I'm really amazing things that Raj does. It's just one of the coolest ever met. And sorry I couldn't be with you at South by Southwest in Austin, Raj, but thank you for.
I'm afraid with an introduction from here, but I'm to do this, and I'm excited to. And you know, I mean, if social distancing for the foreseeable, but we can absolutely.
You know,
Thank you for asking. But you know, one doesn't want to sort of overdo economy built on care. It's really important to see and celebrate that and hang on to as much of it as we can and build as much of it as we feel it for what is surely coming next.
Well, can you talk more about that? I mean, I love that phrase, an economy of care. What does that actually mean, and how can we get people involved in that?
You know, so here's the big picture. The Green New Deal is an idea that has been sort of summed up in bumper sticker form as a vision of the future that's about caring and repairing. Think about what the low carbon work is. It's the work of education, of healthcare, of caring for the soil, of farming, of feeding one another. Of being involved in food service work and in general in being part of a circular economy where our hands matter. And that kind of economy of care in the broad sense of using the Marxist term is reproductive labor, but basically all the work that modern capitalism expects to happen for free or for very little money. That kind of care work is really what we're leaning into right now, and what we're also having to figure out ways of building, particularly as certain parts of this care economy are being disbanded, and we're seeing, for example, food service workers laid off, and we're seeing their rights eroded in order to be able to pay for the relief package that's coming through right now.
Absolutely. And I mean, but this isn't the first time we've experienced something like this. 10 years ago when H1N1 hit, food service workers, tried to ban, I mean, they have been banding together, but they tried to fight for paid sick leave, and that didn't happen. Why are we still so far behind when it comes to respecting not only food workers, but also farm laborers and farmers themselves?
Well, I mean, in part, the food industry has been tremendously successful under both Obama and Trump administrations in fighting off any attempts to legislate them. Even with the emergency legislation passed recently, paid sick leave won't reach huge numbers of workers in the food system. And we've got layers of difficulty for food service workers right now. I mean, for example, non-resident workers are afraid to ask for public assistance because under Trump's rules, being a public charge may disqualify them from green cards. Warehouse workers are being asked to work massive overtime in close quarters while no one's looking after their kids. Restaurant workers are facing massive layoff. Undocumented workers don't know where to turn for healthcare or income support. And in general, across the board, information isn't reaching food service workers. And this is a sign of the power of groups like the National Restaurant Association and of the power of agribusiness. So it's not as if workers haven't been organizing, because they have. The Food Chain Workers Alliance, the Restaurant Opportunity Center, Rock United, all these amazing groups that and that you've provided, that you've worked with and interviewed and foregrounded their work. All of them are really pushing hard for this, but the industry has government's ear, and they continue to. I mean, this is the great worry right now, is that I'm seeing all kinds of chicanery order in this time of emergency to pay for payment or in a copay.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm like, seeing the wrong people for COVID-19 or coronavirus, because this is, similar to H1N1. This was a disease, that is spread, touching our food system in different ways, from farmers to food workers to distributors. Food folks get blamed for this rather than the real culprits, and that's I think a problem that needs more awareness and more advocacy around.
Who is it that now is absolutely vital in supporting the economy and providing care? It is food service workers. Who is it that's going to be running to the grocery store and bringing considered the most important in terms of, say, engineers who are taking care of sewage, who are engaged in your real worry here is certain kinds of neoliberal extremism. All of a sudden, you see Social Security being raided, position in the future. Those kinds of assaults on workers are incredibly dangerous right now, and they target absolutely the most vulnerable and the most economically disadvantaged groups. To recognize the politics of that care.
Yeah, I mean, we're putting people who are already at risk at even more risk, and it's just, it's unconscionable to me that that's happening in this time of crisis. I know you've been very involved about how to deal with, elders in the community or children who are at as well. Do you have advice for how to sort of deal with, you know, community? What are you what your neighbor?
In touch, elderly or immunocompromised. We're all together. Observing here. Sustainable food is expensive. Organic and where workers are provided a dignified wage, that's hard. And many of the ways that restaurants, those restaurants are shutting down. Interested in the food system can support those farms is by signing up for community-supported agriculture initiatives. So there's now many local sustainable farms have capacity in their CSAs. Absolutely. And this is coming on stream. You're going to get tins of rubbish at market. You're already doing the food system a favor, right? Regional, local, sustainable, seasonal, and CSA. That's been taken away from them. You can be that. Something to step into.
I just want to make sure that our listeners, CSAs are those box subscription services that you produce. Right now, you know,
the rest on those health them and also make some of the able to join. Important. I mean, unfortunately, Austin is no longer accepting new volunteers, and through donations to be able to support some of that. Care that can knit here in in cutting back
So
workers'
true.
rights. We have to absolutely see this as they do, as a moment. Uh, one another. That offers an opportunity, I think, to, if you don't do it now.
I mean, that like I think all of us in grappling with, is there a food, if we can use this as an opportunity to really organize and mobilize in a cohesive way and have these uncomfortable discussions that you're describing. And healthcare and all the things that we should all care about, that should be non and get the support and investment that they need.
But so,
I mean, this is it with more of that of need to be
I think you're right that COVID-19 happens, when the next big, it's going to put a lot of people out of home, and then what's going to happen? Everyone's going to have to find, a big church hall to sleep in,
right.
and of COVID-19, and all of a sudden you have these individual emergencies that are disasters at the worst of times, and now a disaster at the best of times, and now of course that they compound one another.
Absolutely.
And the worry for me is that we can't look terribly far up the political food chain, certainly not in Texas, but in general, for the kind of leadership that's thinking that far ahead. And that's why I'm really interested in hearing what you're hearing from food movements, and more structurally, about how it is we can knit all this together. And I certainly am hearing my colleagues who are working on the Green New Deal observing that, in fact, this is the repair. But certainly the Trump administration isn't ready to listen. Aren't terribly keen on it either. But who is keen on it is the majority of people who are affected by this, which we bring to our daily support of one another, that can actually make that happen in a way where we're organizing through our tweeting away, or and I think that even though and this is the irony, right, that here we are isolated, but it's also an optimal time to organize as we care for. That's not something that many of us have experienced, because we haven't had the sort of this kind of emergency happen in our lifetimes.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the word love. I mean, this is, ways to care for one another. I was talking to a nonprofit yesterday that works with school districts to, help cook meals from scratch and provide healthy school lunches and other healthy school meals. And, they're getting, so many from people who just want to help and they want to donate money. And what they're trying to do right now is listen and bring all those school districts together and share information as widely as possible about how different school districts are dealing with mobile feeding and making sure that kids who were depending on schools for not, just lunch, but breakfast and dinner kids don't go hungry. And it's just, you know, it's a different way of thinking about what the political system looks like. You know, these school districts have a lot of power and a lot of opportunity, and helping them figure this out is, you know, this crisis out is really, really important. And as we're seeing.
And that's it, Danny. I think, you know, what you put your finger on there is a moment where there are communities in which we are embedded, but who need support right now. One of the worries about some of COVID and support around the food system is that as much as we may dislike of parochializing our own love,
Right.
we run the danger of thinking this is only happening in America,
Right.
and it isn't. There are in the 1918 pandemic were in fact Western instituted the modern food system, where
Right.
you know, Indians were forced to export grain in order to you know, have enough money in order to be able to survive.
Sure.
And those modern trading systems meant that the shock of the back then, what was called Spanish flu H1N1 was projected into Western India, and the majority, more than half the people who died. And
Wow.
it's important to remember that the deaths that will happen from COVID-19 will predominantly happen outside this country because of things this country has done. In the way that this country has fragmented healthcare systems in order to make them more efficient, under the guidance of, you know, things like the World Bank, or systemically weaken and prohibit the sort of creation of grain storage, for example, and food
Right.
storage,
Right.
because, you know, here in the United States, we can always buy food from wherever in the world we need it, and it will be shipped to us. But what about those places? You know,
Absolutely.
we need to be thinking very hard about how it is that, you know, what we owe, where you know, the harms we have caused projected through through the world system.
Absolutely, absolutely. Such a great reminder of, you know, we're still responsible for all the bad stuff that we've done, and we need to figure that out, that this isn't just about us, it's about the whole world,
Well,
and
that's, I
how
mean,
they're dealing with it.
that's right. Just because something shitty to us, shitty is happening to us, it doesn't mean that we're not responsible for that. You know, that's not a message we're hearing a whole lot of right now, but it's really important to remember that our solidarity and love for one another does have to be international, and our responsibilities have to be international too.
Yeah,
Particularly
absolutely.
us, as privileged as we are sitting here.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I want to go back to the new Green Deal that you brought up before, and I know you've been working so closely with IPES to you know, study what a new food economy could look like for the United States, but also, you know, other parts of the world. Positive things to think about while we're going through this sort of isolation from one another.
Well, Danny, I think certainly the work that we're doing at IPES Food, IPE systems, you know, what we're doing is, again, listening. We're listening to movements in the United States of tension and the points of conflict, as you know, we imagine develop a new policy. More importantly, though, I think the broader coalitions that are emerging around the Green New Deal, not just in the food system, but linking the food system to housing, to transportation, to energy, to healthcare. Great thing. So if folk want hope, the Sunrise Movement constantly am amazed by the power and the urgency and but the movement
So
for a
young,
Green New
too.
Deal. Oh my
Sorry, I mean, they're
God.
young geniuses, and they want to change things, and they're not taking no for an answer. I love getting their missives, over email. A great example. Keep
But
going.
that's
Sorry.
no, but that's it. I mean, and wherever in the world we're seeing these transformations and movements towards sustainable, food systems, I'm heartened. I mean, right now, for example, the sustainable food movement is also in a position to be able to say, hey, you know what? If you want a food system that isn't connected to, that isn't a sort of doesn't create the conditions in which these kinds of zoonotic diseases are more likely to jump species, then what you want is a sustainable food system.
Right.
And those movements are need is much more sustainable care and repair of our relationship to one another and to the planet. Those ideas are popping up everywhere, from Algeria to the European Union, the United Kingdom, and here in the United States. And these, I think, are grounds for hope. And I very much hope that folk watching now will be able to track down those groups through your website, Danny.
We will provide those links. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is some of my friends have, kids who are home from college or who are college seniors who are now, essentially graduated. And, I think it's good to remember that these are kids with a lot of time, or young people with a lot of time on their hands, and not knowing what to do with the energy that they have been, devoting to their studies or activism on campuses. And it's a good reminder that there are, a million other sort of Greta Thunbergs out there. What's your advice? Because you're a professor and you work with young people all the time. What's your advice for those students who are, home now from really all over the world because their college campuses have been shut down?
That volunteering and donating your time and energy, not just to making sure that folk in your neighborhood are well taken care of in ways that are, that follow the social distancing protocols, but that take care of you and the folk in your neighborhood, that's a good idea. But beyond that, getting involved in the politics, movements like Sunrise, for example, like the Movement for a Green New Deal, those organizations offer a way of bringing the politics to bear and provide political language and education in ways that can make this useful time, not just a kind of moment of treading water, but a moment of mind expansion and political expansion for you.
Our co-host of a really great podcast. Do you want to give a short
sure,
description of it? I think people have a lot of time on their hands right now, and they should be learning, and you're one of the best people to learn from.
You'll flatter away. Tom Philpott, who is the environment and food correspondent for Mother Jones magazine, and Rebecca McInroy, who's a producer at the local NPR station KUT here in Austin. We put together something called The Secret Ingredient. And if you're interested in food politics and food history, then The Secret Ingredient is a podcast that may be of some interest. The sort of slug line is that we won't tell you what to eat, but we can tell you why you're eating it. So we do a sort of deep history of capitalism, colonialism, and death. So capitalism, colonialism, and we are just about. And we're just doing we finished actually a good new season on COVID-19. So visit thesecretingredient.org for more on that.
Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for Secret Ingredient. Raj, I'll look forward to talking to you again soon, and hopefully in person in a few months.
Looking forward to that, Danny. Looking forward to it.
viewers today, if you want more information about Raj Patel, you can go to foodtank.com. And hopefully we'll see you again this time tomorrow with more